Welcome, Donnie.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Can you give us a little introduction about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Donnie Hill, and I am based in Oakland, California, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. I currently do business strategy and leadership development, but I take a somatic approach to it. So I tell people leading your team or leading your business or building your business already is a lot of work and takes a lot out of you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. But you still have to do the work and you still have to be profitable. So I work with you to do that in a more sustainable way so that you're building your business without ignoring your mental health and your nervous system. And I just want business building to be a much more enjoyable experience for people.
It can be really hard.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people pride themselves on how much they suffer doing it.
Yes, I definitely was one of those people and realized there is no glory in this. Like I might be successful, but I'm tired and I can't enjoy myself, or I don't have any flexibility. So I realized that equation just didn't work. It didn't work for me. I wanted to be able to have more freedom and flexibility, and now I do.
So how did you get into this?
So my background is all over the place. I tell people I followed my interest versus having some linear path. So when I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a doctor. I planned on being an orthopedic surgeon and have my own rehabilitation center. And then I got into biochemistry in college and realized I did not want to be a doctor because I had to get to biochemistry. So I switched to psychology and realized I didn't want to be a therapist, but I enjoyed understanding human behavior. But I ended up graduating with a degree in theater. So I worked as a professional actor for a number of years. And while I was working as an actor, I was leading workshops around movement and presenting and confidence. And then I started working for a presentation skills company. And I was their marketing and training manager. So I was helping their trainers learn how to facilitate virtual training. So basically what everybody had to learn how to do in 2020, I was doing with that company in 2010. And so I was doing a lot of virtual production at that time. From there, one of my mentors who was with the presentation skills company, she was developing a certification program, a coaching certification program to work with cancer patients and their families. And I thought, this might be a way for me to get back into healthcare without having to go to medical school. This sounds great. So I applied to the coaching certification program. I got into the program, and then the week after I got into the program, my mom got her cancer diagnosis. So she's a 10-year cancer survivor. And I worked with cancer patients and their families for a number of years. But the work I was doing with them was helping them navigate the emotional ups and downs of a cancer diagnosis, but also like, how do you communicate with one another? So oftentimes I would be working with the caregiver and the patient together and helping them have better communication with one another and more candid communication with one another. And at the time I was working with an integrative medicine team, and the medical director said, I think you should do some communication and leadership development work with my staff. Okay. Sure, why not?
Cool offer.
So yeah, it was a great experience. So I ended up doing a lot of leadership development work with them. And a lot of that work was around strategy, thinking more strategically as a leader. What does that mean in terms of leading your people? What does it mean in terms of leading your patients? What does it mean in terms of creating a better customer experience for the patient experience? And I really enjoyed doing that work because now I was bringing some of the communication work that I had done to the business setting. And I really enjoyed talking about business. So I did that for, I think, 4 years. And after that, I started working for a tech company. And I did sales enablement. So I was doing sales training for their sales reps and their sales managers. I headed up a global marketing education program of about 650 marketers worldwide. And I was developing the curriculum for their marketing education program. So that included business storytelling, value proposition, digital marketing work. And about 5 years in, I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. So in April of 2020, I left my full-time, well-paying tech job to build my own coaching and consulting company. And I've been doing that for the past 2.5 years.
Cool. You definitely tried out a few things. But it seems like you always added something on top of the other. And then it with a little twist and it became better.
Yeah. So what I tell people, because they often ask, oh, go ahead.
No, please continue.
What I tell people is, look, my work has always been about performance and self-mastery, right? But it comes through the leadership lens. It comes through the business or business strategy lens. It comes from the physical health and personal well-being lens. I was a pole vaulter in college and a certified personal trainer. And so I'm always thinking about the mind and the body in addition to the business. And that's really, I think about that as being my value proposition or my distinction in the market, because I'm looking at you as holistically as a business owner or a business leader. Because if your health is out, or your mental, whether it be your physical or your mental, like your business just isn't going to go anywhere. And if you're constantly in fight, flight, or freeze in your nervous system, like you just end up bringing that into your business. And so I think the education piece around, hey, how does your mind work? How does your nervous system work? How do those things play out in your leadership or in your communication or in your sales and marketing conversations? It's fun to mix a whole bunch of things that seemingly don't go together.
It's definitely a very different approach to what most people do. So can you explain what that means? Because I think that's a new concept for most people. What does it mean to bring the whole person into the business?
Yes. So I'll use myself as an example. Mm-hmm. Right before we hopped on the recording, I told you that I recently got a divorce. Yeah. So, there's grief that happens with the divorce. There's sadness, there's anger and frustration. So all of that emotional stuff is still very present as I interact with my clients, as I'm thinking about workshops that I need to create or courses that I need to create. It's present in my conversations with people. And fortunately, because of the cancer coaching work and because of the nervous system work that I've done, I have a better relationship to my emotions than I had prior to having those experiences and going through that training. And so I can go through kind of the chaos of it, even as I'm going through my day-to-day. But if you think about, if I tried to ignore those things or compartmentalize those things, it would end up, for me at least, adding more additional stress, because now I'm trying to take all of this energy to block all of this stuff out, right? That I can't really fully be present to the work that I'm doing because I'm like trying to hold this closet closed, right? Rather than just letting the closet be open and recognizing, all right, there's stuff in there, I'm going to have to get to it. And I have to continue doing my day-to-day within my business. And so when I look at what's happening now with the rising numbers in mental health cases and people dealing with illnesses, they're going up, even though we have more and better resources than we had before. And I believe part of it is because we haven't fully given ourselves permission to like acknowledge, hey, stuff is hard. Today is hard. And can I let today being hard be a normal part of my day to day versus me trying to pretend like everything is okay? And I think it does us a disservice by trying to leave our emotions out of the equation than by knowing how to work with them and use them. And so there's that aspect. The other aspect of it is, I think more and more people are looking for purpose and pleasure and contribution and, where they fit into the world and all of those things. And there's something about allowing fun and pleasure and joy, like to be a part of our day to day that I think is also really important. Rather than like, oh, once I hit $50,000, then I can be joyful. Or once I hit $50,000, then, I can take a vacation or I can go get a massage or whatever it is that brings a person some ounce of pleasure. And I just don't believe that works for many people anymore. So I'm really interested in looking at, how do you acknowledge the hard stuff? How do you bring in the pleasure? And how do you, handle your day-to-day responsibilities in a more, I guess, fluid way? And what I find is that leaders who are able to do it usually build more trust because they're like, yeah, I'm dealing with stuff too, and I'm here. So it shows people that they can do it, or it gives them permission to at least, explore it for themselves. Yeah.
It seems like you're talking about doing something in spite of yourself. You're doing it with yourself. Is that kind of?
That's a wonderful way to. Yeah.
So
like I don't have to leave any part out of the equation.
And when you work with somebody, how would that look? Can you give an example?
Yeah. So I have a client that I'm working with right now who she's been a teacher for 50 years. And she's now wanting to go back and work with new teachers. And what she's finding is that a lot of the teachers they're either leaving teaching or they're leaving the school or they're burned out and they're just not enjoying their profession anymore. And so I asked her, I was like, well, what are you inviting them to? And she said, well, I think there's an ancestral component to it. Of like, there's all this wisdom that our relatives and our ancestors had, but we leave all of that out in order to follow the curriculum that the state has assigned us, right? And so the curriculum just becomes very, very rigid. And I said, great. Well, how are you bringing your own kind of ancestral wisdom into your work? And she said, I've actually been leaving it out of my work for a long time. I said, great. Then that's our work today. So when we're working together, a lot of the questions I ask her are around like her joy. What would she need to bring in order for the course to feel more like her? And she said, well, at one point I wanted to be an archaeologist. But growing up, when I grew up, I only had these options. And she grew up in the 50s and 60s. And I said, okay, so what do you enjoy about archaeology? And she's like, well, there's this excavation process. And she started talking about things like you would see in an Indiana Jones movie. And I said, oh, so basically you want to be like the female version of Indiana Jones. And she said, yes, that's kind of the passion I want to bring to my work and that I want to bring to teachers. And I said, great, you're bringing your own personal joy and the pieces of yourself back into your work. And so that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is looking at like the actual business structure. How does she want to build her business? Well, she wants to be a speaker. She's written a book, but she hasn't really done anything with the book yet. And so now we're looking at the strategy around what educational associations can she go talk to? Kind of the schools have a professional development day. Can she be a speaker at those? What other school districts or superintendents does she need to look at or connect with? So now I'm helping her figure out where does she take her program that we've been working on and implement it into other hubs where educators would be or where educational administrators would be. And the third piece is around the actual somatic and nervous system piece. So she hates sales and marketing. And I said, well, that's understandable. Most people hate sales and marketing who are more impact, especially if they're more impact focused or service focused. Mm-hmm. And I started doing some nervous system education with her. And I said, yeah, it sounds like you have a little bit of freeze or flight when it comes to your sales and marketing conversations. Like you either run away from them, or if it's time for you to tell someone about your work, you go to like a deer in the headlights. And she said, yeah. And I would do some somatic exercises with her. So I would ask her things like, let's think about a sales conversation. As you even just think about a sales conversation, do you feel yourself getting flushed? Like, does your heart rate go up? Do your palms get sweaty? So she's like, yeah. And I would just help her go through some practices to help her deactivate some of that activation in her system. And what I find is that she then would engage more in the sales and marketing activities because we let some of that old survival stress out. And she's like, oh yeah, I don't mind having a conversation. It's like the next logical thing that I need to do. It's like, perfect. So like you said, it's really helping my leaders learn how to work with themselves versus a fight against themselves.
Yeah. There's that hustle culture, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I get it, and I get being a part of it. Like in some aspects of my life, I'm still a part of hustle culture, and it has a purpose. But I think where it becomes not so helpful for people is when that's the only way that they know how to operate. So I don't remember whether or not we talked about this in our previous call, but when I was 20, like I checked myself into a hospital because I was dealing with really bad anxiety and depression. And part of it was just because like I was constantly trying to keep up with everybody and everything, and wanted to prove my worth. That's usually what it comes down to. And so I feel like there's an aspect of hustle culture that is very much about proving your worth to people. And it ends up being more harm than help. So if you can be in it and then step away from it from time to time, but if you're constantly just in it and you're on the hamster wheel all the time, I don't believe it's good.
Right. You want that internal agility.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is about choice. Like, yeah, I can be a part of it, and I can choose not to be a part of it. And when I'm not a part of it, I'm okay with not being a part of it, right? And then when I'm tired of not being a part of it, then I can jump back into it again. Yeah.
So how does the nervous system approach fit into that? You made a little example before. And also, what's the difference to trauma work? Because you're not doing trauma work, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So when I talk about taking a nervous system approach, it comes back to helping people be aware of like, how does your body feel as you're doing the activities? And it feels kind of weird or it sounds weird. And people are like, well, why am I doing this? I say things like, you're going into a meeting and maybe you're nervous as you're going into the meeting. Your nervous system is the thing that's telling you, hey, I'm nervous. Your nervous system is the thing that's making your heart beat faster. It's making your palms sweat. And so I think when people get like the physiological component of what's happening when they have interactions with people or when they do things, then it brings a whole different level of awareness to themselves and to their business. And so where my skill set is I'm really more of a translator. So I talk a little bit about the nervous system, but then I'll take some of the concepts around the nervous system and flip it into business language. So one of the concepts I talk about is building capacity. And you can think about building capacity as being able to swim, starting off swimming in a kiddie pool, and then learning how to swim inside of a regular sized pool, and then learning how to swim inside of an Olympic sized pool. Like, you wouldn't take a baby who is just learning how to sit in the kiddie pool and put them in the middle of an Olympic-sized swimming pool and expect them to know how to swim, right? No. Or to be able to swim all the way to the edge. And so if you think about what happens with leaders or people who jump into business, it's like taking them out of that kiddie pool and putting them into an Olympic-sized pool. They might know how to do some of the motions, but they don't have enough capacity to help them do it in a sustainable way. So then you get into business and you're like, oh, I have to deal with legal, and I have to deal with taxes, and I have to do sales and marketing. I have to build programs. It's a lot of stuff. So it becomes overwhelming, right? And that ends up activating your nervous system. So either you become really agitated and aggressive, which impacts your leadership and your communication, or you run away and like you aren't having conversations with people and you're avoidant, and maybe you need to fire someone or you need to have a difficult conversation with someone, but you're non-confrontational because your nervous system is making you run away, or you freeze, right? And you just shut down and you kind of just go through the motions, but you're numb as you go through the motion. You're like, what am I doing? Why am I here? And where am I? And so by people getting some level of awareness of what's happening to themselves as they build their business, they can say, oh, you know what? I need to pause. I don't need to do this thing right now because I'm not ready to do it. Or, yeah, I need to hit this deadline because I promised them that I would get this to them tomorrow. And then afterwards, I need to go back and take care of myself and get some of this survival stress out of my system so that I can come back to calm and peaceful and more focused, mindful state. So there's that. Now, the trauma piece, you're right. I don't do trauma work. So I'm not asking people to go into traumatic events that happened, or we're not having conversations around those. Sometimes they might come up in our coaching just because something that we're working on is bringing up some level of emotion. But what I'll tell people is like, okay, that's good information to know. And, that's not the work that I do. You should either find someone who can support you in that or around that, or talk to your therapist if they're seeing a therapist. But I'm not going into people's stuff.
Okay, clear boundaries. Okay, I see.
And I think the trauma-informed piece, I use that language because it's really like, oh, I'm aware, or maybe trauma-aware is a more accurate term. Like, I'm aware that people have stuff, and I'm working with it or working around it, but I'm not diving into it.
Okay. Because, right, sometimes things are like linked emotionally, where you need to, or you want to push to the next level in your business, and then it triggers something that was buried inside you. Where do you draw the line, or how do you deal with that more specifically when it comes up?
It really just depends on the person. So I think about that as like being an activation in someone. So if a big activation comes up for someone, then I'll have them talk about it, but I'll only have them talk about it so I can understand how it's impacting their business or impact them taking action or not taking action. Right. And so, for instance, if someone tells me, I had a client who said, hey, Donnie, I know we were working on our business models. And as I think about money, like I have a bunch of stuff from childhood coming up. And I can't look at this right. And I said, okay. And so my way of kind of interacting with her post that conversation was, all right, so I know we need to look at your business model because it's how you get paid, and what additional support do you need as we go through this piece? And she said she was working with a specialist around that piece. So I said, they're going to be responsible for that, and I'm going to work with you on the business model. But what I want you to do is every time we begin working on the business model, I want you to let me know, hey, I'm getting triggered. Can we slow down or can we pause for a moment? And I say, yeah. So during that conversation, if we were talking about it, I would constantly check in and say, hey, how are you feeling as we go through it? What are you noticing in your body? And she would say things like, oh, I can feel my breath getting a little shallower, or, I can feel my palms getting sweaty, or I feel some tension in my neck. And I said, great. Okay. Let's just kind of be with the tension in the neck, and we'll pause here for right now. And then once it went away, or once it went down a little bit, then she say, okay, I'm ready. Let's talk about it some more. And so it's really just learning how to pace and attune with them in the conversation.
I think that's incredibly interesting because, right, we're usually used to that just pushing through. So just hearing you talk about it is kind of like blowing my mind. And it kind of creates a very peaceful atmosphere. I get the sense. What do you think, or what are your impressions on that?
Yeah, I call my method the easy and restorative method for business building, because in my mind, it's supposed to be that. Like I've tried pushing as well, and I've done a bunch of business programs where it's like, well, you need to nail it down, and then you need to go out and do this thing. And in my mind, I know I need to do it, and it sounds very logical, but there wasn't any kind of safety or connection with my body, my physiology. And so I didn't do it. It didn't feel safe for me. And I think part of what you're speaking to is like I'm helping people feel safe again as they build their business or as they lead their team. And yes, it's a slower process, but it's a much more impactful process, because now when you go and do the thing, all of you is on board to do the thing. It's not like your mind is telling you to go and your body is going in the opposite direction. Yeah. They're both moving in the same direction. And I personally believe like leadership and business, they can be easy and they can be restorative, but we have to learn how to listen to ourselves differently for them to be easy and restorative.
Right. Your slogan is like well rested, well paid, deeply appreciated, right?
Mm-hmm. If my vision is, when I think about that, like being able to see a bunch of leaders who are like, yes, my bank account is happy, I'm having a really good time, I'm just kind of doing my thing, and I'm at peace as I'm doing my thing, and they feel good about their work and they feel respected for their work.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss, for sure.
Where does the deeply appreciated part fit in? Or how did you come to that part? How does it work?
Yeah. That's... I think so much of my healing journey over the past 16 or 17 years has been learning how to appreciate myself and learning what that actually means. Like, I think I had an intellectual understanding of what it meant, but in my actions, it really wasn't that. And so, like, the deeply appreciated piece, you know, one of the things you and I worked on was your Clifton strengths. And I think the strengths give us some insight into things we naturally do well. And so when we can build our work and our world around those strengths, like that's a level of honoring and appreciation, right? I think being able to follow your own pace is a level of honoring and appreciation. So my pace now is much slower than it used to be because I'm not pushing and hustling and trying to do all the things. And like, because it's much slower, I'm recognizing like I have a lot more love and appreciation for myself because I'm more attuned to my wants and my needs and the things that bring me joy. And I feel like working inside of environments or being in communities where I haven't necessarily been appreciated has been hard, right? And so when I interact with people, I want them to know that they matter because I want to know that I matter. And if I can help people reconnect to that for themselves, then that feels like a gift.
It is. It definitely is. I kind of want to leave that as the last words. Honor and appreciation for yourself and what you bring into the world. You okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
So to close off, how can people work with you? How does that work? And where can people find and connect with you?
Yeah, they can send me an email, Donnie, Donnie, at thelifemaximizer.com. You can check out my website, www.thelifemaximizer.com. And I've been doing a lot more on Instagram. My handle is at the Life Maximizer. So it has a combination of personal stuff and business stuff. Let's say probably the last few posts have been me just enjoying life more so than work related stuff. But it's been fun to weave that in as well.
And when you work with people, how does that look? How long does it take? What kind of offers do you have?
Yeah. So people can work with me in one of two ways. I have a 10-week container, and that's really more focused on putting together their go-to-market plan. So we'll work on their messaging, we'll work on their positioning and their platform. Usually it's looking at the strategy, like what does your ecosystem look like? And then where do you want to go speak, or how are you using social media? And then if people want to work more in depth with me, I have 2 6-month containers. One is the well-rested, well-paid leader. So for individuals interested in that program, it's really intended for you if you're like, I'm tapped out, I need to come back to myself. Not really sure what I want to do anymore. Like, I've spent all this time either building a business or doing work that served me in the past, but it's not really fulfilling now. And I need to take some time to restore and reboot. And then my other 6-month container is Max Your Next Level. And that one's really looking at business leaders who are ready to expand their brand or expand their work. So we do a lot of business strategy. We do a lot of sales coaching and sales work, and that one's more of an accelerator. I tell people I'm interested in helping you have your M&Ms, like the candy. And for me, M&Ms are money and meaning. I love for socially.
I love that.
I love for social impact entrepreneurs to get paid because you're already doing meaningful work. But sometimes the money piece scares. And I just think that, part of being well rested, well paid, and deeply appreciated is getting the money that you deserve for the work that you do.
I think a lot of people want that. Thank you so much for coming on. I definitely appreciate it.
I love our conversation.